Occasionally, we invite a business on our show, and it takes us some time to get them to accept our invitation. And our next guest is undoubtedly one we've waited patiently to introduce to our community. Without a doubt, worth the wait, and we believe after you get to know them, you'll understand why we waited so patiently to have them as a guest on our show. A fantastic part of our community, providing quality service and products for decades. It's an honor and a privilege to introduce Skeeter Murphy, owner of Big O Tires, the one that's located on 4th and Sutro in Reno. Skeeter, thanks for taking your time out of your day to accept our invitation to finally appear on our show.
Thank you, Mitch.
If you will, take a minute and start with a little history lesson of your time in the automotive industry. What happened that made you make the decision to open your own shop, and especially why you chose Big O as a franchisee?
Well, it started off 20 years ago, probably being a construction worker. In July of 2006, I fractured my back, got ran over by my truck in my driveway and needed something different. Saw the construction was kind of dwindling to nothing. And my neighbor across the street from me owned 2 Big O's in town, and he gave me the opportunity, and I took it. It was the best thing I've ever done.
Well, and since you've been there, you've been providing just tremendous service. So I guess the question is Big O is, most of the shops are franchised, so they're independently owned and operated like yours are. And we want to make sure that people understand that the one we're endorsing for our community is the one on 4th and Sutro. But there's something that goes into establishing a level of reputation that you have in our community. Where does that come from? And what happened that makes you give so much to perfection?
I think it was the way I was born and raised, moral and ethics. I will do everything possible to keep that customer happy and always coming back.
Well, and you do that. And again, this is decades of our being in this community to decide which businesses are worthy of the endorsement by the CarBuyer Advisor. And again, a privilege to represent your shop as one of our top automotive facilities. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear when we start with the tire process, is all of the other things that you offer at the same level of quality. But let's start with tires, since that's one of your specialties at Big O Tires. And I think the consumer, again, we talk about this all the time, with these economic times, they're trying to get the most for their money, which is what we want them to do. But there's a price and a value and an equation there that goes into that. And a lot of times they just become flat out price shoppers, and then they wind up with things that are not necessarily the best for them. And tires is probably one of the biggest areas that happens in. So let's talk about the tire selection process for that price shopper, the things they need to know to be satisfied with their tire purchase. So let's start with some of the tire ratings on them, what they mean, and how they can shop for a quality tire instead of just a price tire.
I mean, traction ratings go from anywhere from a AA traction, which is an actual rating given to high-performance tires, to a G rating on asphalt or concrete, and then they go down from there to an A, B, or C.
And so what would a consumer want to know about those ratings and what they represent? Because traction sounds like the only thing between you and the ground is a tire, and that traction would be the grip on the road. So is there a correlation between traction, let's say, and tire life expectancy?
I would say so. A AA, you're going to have a softer compound per se. The warranty on a AAA standard tire, Y-rated, a W-rated tire, let's say on a Corvette, you won't get the mileage out of it.
But you'll get the grip with the ground with all that horsepower that keeps you glued to it instead of sliding around.
Correct.
And then you just mentioned something that I think is fascinating, you just mentioned it, and I think a lot of consumers understood it, but many didn't realize that not all rubber is the same, that there are different compounds of it. So if you could discuss that process, or what goes into a compound of a tire.
Compound of a tire, I mean, if you go to a high-performance tire, silica-based, it has a softer compound per se, like Mitch was saying, a lot more grip, a lot better handling on a high-performance tire, whereas if you get into the light truck stuff, it's a harder compound, more durable, you get more life out of it.
And so when you get to a harder compound, there's also ride characteristics to go with that harder compound.
Correct.
Firmer ride.
Correct.
The softer compound, softer ride. And I think this is where a lot of consumers really need some help in the tire selection process. But before we get into that full picture, let's talk about some of the other ratings, like temperature ratings.
Temperature ratings, what can I say?
I guess the question is, where would it be that somebody would want a higher temperature rating than another, for an example?
So let's say some of the low economy tires that you get out now, if you went to, let's say, Arizona, that tire would not withstand, the 100+ degrees that tire's running at.
Extended heat, plus the pavement operates at a lot higher than the outside temperature because the asphalt absorbs the heat. And so you're saying that if you don't have the right temperature rating and you're going to be frequently traveling to these higher temperature areas, you're going to wonder why your tire just didn't get the life expectancy you expected out of it. It's because it wasn't rated for the temperatures you were consuming it in.
Correct.
And let's talk about speed rated tires.
Speed rated anywhere from, the new one just came out as in Y. It's been out for, 5-6 years now, for anything over 186 miles an hour, down to W and V. V being normal, 149 is the miles per hour on that tire, and then you got T and S, which is on the standard type, automotive tire going on a regular Corolla or something.
And then there are mud and snow ratings. And I think a lot of consumers, we had this conversation earlier, will go out and they'll price shop. And they may forget that we live in an environment where you might need something that can transfer well compound-wise into the winter colder temperatures. And they'll get a price on a standard summer tire, and then somebody like you won't even quote them on that if you listen to them and you hear that they're going to be consuming it year-round in our community, you're going to quote them on a mud and snow automatically. And they're going to look at that price and think that they're getting a lower price or a better deal somewhere, but they're actually sacrificing something critical. So we want to point that one out too. And then tread life. Let's talk about tread life, because this really goes into the tire selection process as well. And they're actually rated on the tires too.
Correct.
So give us an idea of the tread life ratings on tires and what a consumer should look for when they're looking at tires. They're ratings from what to what? From 0 to 600?
Treadwear life, you're looking the UTQG, treadwear life, oh God, like Michelin 600 maybe, down to your high performance stuff being, I ran some on my Mustang, it was 320, at the least.
So we're talking about the length of time that you can expect to have the tire perform on a car before you have to replace it. And so some of these tires come with warranties up to 60,000 miles, for an example.
Michelin right now is all the way up to about 100K right now on their Hydro Edge.
In order to get 100,000 miles out of a tire, what does a manufacturer have to do to make that tire last that long? Is this the compound issue we were talking about?
It's all through the manufacturer. The manufacturer will test this. It'll come up with its own mileage guarantee on their own tire. They're just stating that tire should be able to run at 100,000 miles, giving that you take care of the tire rotation, balance, and you have it aligned. Well,
and again, a lot of times, a lot of these, maybe not all, but most of the higher mileage tires are using a harder compound that allows that tire to roll with less friction, resistance, and give you an increased tire wear.
Correct.
And so ultimately, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't weigh is that a lot of these harder compounds are sometimes coming with the consequence of reduced traction ratings.
Correct.
And because they're reducing rolling resistance to increase the life of the tire, so you're giving up some stickiness to the ground.
Correct.
So that, and the other thing too is the ride qualities of some of these firmer compound tires. We were talking about how you would first try to diagnose the consumer's needs before even selecting a tire with them. So what would you say if I walked into your shop and I said, I'm driving up and down Mount Rose Highway? How would that pertain to a tire that you were to select for me?
I would try to. Honestly, that turning and braking, you're going to wear the tires out. We've had Muranos come in that need new tires every 20,000 miles, and they don't understand it. But it's the constant turning and braking. I would just try to get you into a tire that for the bang for the buck.
That was going to handle that kind of driving. If I said I'm in a Cadillac and the ride quality is important to me, you may go with a softer compound, for an example.
Certainly, I don't want to get away from what's on the door placard. If it's a V-rated tire, we probably should stay with it. You're going to be disappointed with, let's say, an S or a T. I wouldn't go with an S, T-rated maybe.
Again, you're going to take the time to talk to the consumer about what their use is, what their needs are. And you mentioned something really critical. And a lot of people that don't get their life out of their tire really neglect. And I think there's something that you do at your shop that they need to hear about when comparing prices as well. Talk first a little bit about the alignment process in your shop.
Alignment is do you buy four? It's a free alignment check. I check it out to see if we have an outside shoulder wear. I also check out the front end because that's going to determine whether or not the alignment's going to be able to be done. Sorry. Our alignments anywhere from $69 to $89.99, depending on if it's a thrust or a two-wheel or if it's a four-wheel alignment.
And you have that capability there. So while they're there getting tires from you, you can also align their car. And then the rotation and balancing, which is so commonly because people are pumping their own gas and they're not checking their tires. One of the key factors of why they don't get the life expectancy out of their tire. But tell us a little about that service that you provide as well.
Well, rotation and balance, I mean, when you buy tires from me, per se, it's all free for the life of that tire.
So typically, what would somebody go out to rotate and pay to rotate and balance their tires on an average day, approximately?
Off the street, you would probably pay $10 per tire in my store.
And so that would be $40 to rotate and balance a set of tires normally, and you're not charging for that if they bought the tires from you. And how often should somebody be rotating and balancing their tires?
Every 5,000, kind of coincided with an oil change. It works perfect.
So if let's say if a tire is a 50,000 mile tire, that would be 10 rotations and balances that if they didn't buy them from you, they could pay as much as about $400 elsewhere to have done.
Correct.
So when they're buying tires from you, if the price is even close, you're saving them potentially $400 by just buying them from you and being able to do free rotation and balance.
Correct.
And then they can come in and have that done and really get the maximum use and performance out of those tires and not have to buy them as soon either.
Sure. I mean, we're doing the babysitting for you. I mean, if we see outside shoulder wear, we're going to recommend an alignment. If we're seeing let's say the middle of the tire, you're overinflated. So we'll babysit those tires for as long as we can.
In a lot of cases, the services you're providing are exceeding the cost of the set of tires to begin with, and then you're going to help me get maybe 20 to 30, 40% more out of the life of that tire that I invested in. So I want our community to understand this is a big part of the reasons why we asked you to be on our show. How would they get a hold of you over at Big O Tires on 4th and Sutra? Address is 1195 East 4th Street. Telephone number is 322-9142. And your website? Website, it is bigotires.com. That's Skeeter Murphy with Big O Tires. Again, the one on 4th and Sutro in Reno is the one the CarBuyer Advisor endorses. Skeeter, thanks for accepting our invitation finally and being here today. Thank you, sir.